Hi, Sabia. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Ruby. How are you?
I'm well. How is everyone doing?
Great, great. Swati, Rushali, hi.
Hi Ritu. Looking good today, Ritu. मतलब for the past week I have wanted to tell you this, लेकिन between the lectures couldn't say.
Okay. Thanks.
I agree with Sabia.
तुम लोग तो कोई मुखड़ा ही नहीं दिखाते हो अपना.
We are too
अरे यार.
disabled to show our faces.
I know it's only me and Ritu ma'am. Yeah, वरना कोई किसी को interest नहीं.
अरे नहीं, I am multitasking, so I don't want to show that I am working. My eyes are fully turned to the screen.
हमेशा, लेकिन अभी क्या करूं, अभी साड़ी मुझे पहनना है.
स्वाति, आप ऐसे भी join कर सकते हो, कोई tension नहीं है ना.
You know this is being recorded, right? So
Yes, right. That is being recorded. Everything.
That was really good. I was waiting for someone to say.
Hello ma'am. Good evening.
good evening,
Hi,
ma'am.
Good evening. Good evening. Yeah. No, you can continue the conversation. I can pause the recording and we can wait for others.
Application of this would be like in a job type scenario, in a workplace scenario. Where could you possibly use this?
So very typically, this was something that I was talking about yesterday as well. So I've started the recording just for records. One is from a very typical class scenario perspective. What you would have is the fact that, for instance, jingles. When we talk about jingles, how are we going to be dealing with jingles, right? Like sound kahan pe aayega? Or when you're a speech writer, to understand why people make plosives and fricatives and affricates are so difficult for them. So in speech therapy, we do, I mean, a lot of the physiologists will pay attention to the sounds. And so there is an entire way that you would write the speech, or you would tell the students who are aware, who stammer and stutter a lot, to be aware of how they can replace words. So that's one point. So that is from a, just from a medical point of view. From the advertising and speech writing point of view, a very simple aspect that comes in is, for you to understand, like when I was doing alliteration and I said, you cannot have tongue twisters. Most tongue twisters around the world are focused on plosives, affricates and fricatives. They start with them. For instance, आपको ज़्यादातर कच्चा पापड़, पक्का पापड़ वैसे मिलेगा, but you won't get too many of और चांदनी की चम्मच से चटनी चटाई kind of thing. You don't get too many of these tongue twisters which start with l, right? The reason you don't get them is because you're not going to stutter so much with l, you're not going to stutter so much with w. So you won't have them in tongue twisters often. You will have plosives and fricatives because your tongue kind of messes it up in that sense. Now, if you understand that, then you also understand that therefore, when someone is reading or speaking, they're going to slow down the pace when they speak these words. That means they're going to spend more time on those words, absorbing the message, meaning, etc., which could mean that I can then try and create those kinds of effects and purposely make you slow down and read my stuff by introducing sounds which are plosives, fricatives, and affricates. I could also avoid it and create a lyricism of mellifluous sounds by avoiding plosives, fricatives, etc., and creating an effect where it sounds very lyrical, fluid. And so rap songs, rapsters are really, really focused on how something just sounds harsh or something sounds simple, because they will use the word like chuck, and it just sounds like it's a violent action, and chop, it just sounds a lot of violent action. And so they will use those words primarily when they want to create a sense of violence. And then they will use more mellifluous lyrical words when they want to create a sense of romance. And so rapsters are very, very conscious of the sound of words, and they break the sounds in different ways. As I said, so therefore speech writers, rapsters, etc., are all very conscious, because sometimes when a sound just seems, to hit you in the face, when something is just coming at you and you are, you feel like this sounds angry, and something sounds angry just because there is a lot of plosives and fricatives in it. And in case you didn't want to give that impression, then you have to be very careful. So yes, political speeches nowadays, a lot of PR nowadays is really focused on how does it sound. And then there are people who will then mispronounce a word so that it sounds softer. Because if you just give it a French accent, everything sounds softer. That goes on to the mispronunciation and, accented ways of speaking, and so on and so forth. So there are different pathways through which you can use phonology and how you want to bring that in. Definitely anything that has soundscape in it, rhyme, rhythm, will want to consider those. By learning phonology, you become also more conscious of disassociating spelling from words and the sounds. And that helps you kind of figure out whether you want to have a new language. So in corpus linguistics and other places, we look at whether a language is to be, there's a language called Esperanto, which is a completely made up language, which kind of unifies the International Phonetic Alphabet, and there is a words and everything. So someone sits down, like Tolkien sits down and composes language, then there are these principles that come in of how you can figure out. See, for instance, when you are dealing with sounds, every soundscape has a particular rule. For instance, in English, you won't find r, t, a together. You will find a, r, t, art. You will find r, a, t, rat. You will find t, a, r, tar. You will find t, r, a, tra, travel, transverse and all of it. You do not often find r, t, a, right? If you're looking at mapping sounds. So with just one sound scheme, there is this thing. Does Hindi have r, t, a?
Ratalu we say.
Yes, ratna, ratalu.
Ma'am, ratta
right.
also.
Right. So you obviously have in Hindi that soundscape, but as I'm telling you and you're trying to think through r, t, a, you realize that there aren't many words that come in English which will be there. And primarily, so even when English is borrowing words, and 80% of English is just borrowed language, it doesn't seem to borrow those words which don't fit in its soundscape. And so that is a kind of language learning and teaching that's instinctive. So babies, when they are learning, there is a kind of instinctive patterning of sounds that they are kind of deducing and creating, and just doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound correct in a particular language, but in the other language, it is fine to have that kind of a soundscape. So those are things that we are still discovering. In fact, one of the most mysterious things about language is the fact that we haven't discovered language. We don't know yet how this origin came out to be. We don't know so much about language in terms of structures. Like, how is it that we decided these categories of noun, verb, adjective, prepositions? Some languages have articles, some languages don't have articles. Like Hindi does not have articles, but of course English has. Some don't have. The way that they're thinking of verbs and nouns are very different. So how did we arrive at this beautiful tool of communication which has helped us progress so much as humans, and seems to be almost the only thing that really makes us human and distinct from orangutans and apes and others, is language. But we don't yet know how we really developed it, and how much of our brain is involved in it is also like the Wernicke's area, the Broca's area. In our brain, just that is so is so, you know, wonderful to see. If I have to showcase, let me see. So if you are focusing on something which is very simple, you would have something of this kind, right? Like in a brain, you would be trying to speak conceptually, the phonological image, the tactile image of a word, the visual image of how that word how that image actually looks. So there is a visual image of the word, and then there is a visual image of the actual thing as well. So if you keep looking at it, so many parts of your brain are actually mapped onto just one word when we are learning, right? Just one single word that we are learning will have that much, in a sense, of an activated. And then it goes on into creating more and more subverbs in terms of memory and phonological production, which may be different from phonological reception. So reception is, I know I hear the word in a way, I can recognize the word, but maybe I don't speak it the same way. So you may hear param, but when you say it, because you're not used to saying ra, you might say palam, right? So you hear it, you recognize it, but you don't speak it in that way. And then there could be multiple visual features and so on and so forth. Now, this is just with reference to one word. It could be that you have this with reference to so many other aspects that come into being. So phonology is basically trying to understand how a given set of sounds, when they are mapped, what is the kind of patterning that is happening? What is the kind of impact that it has on the listener? If you have something which is like break, 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 chop, 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 and if you say laugh, 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 you know, and the moment you have something like break versus laugh, you get the fact that because there is friction at the end, it still seems that you can, it's not as harsh as when you say break or chop, because you definitely pause better after you use a plosive sound. To go back to the table, when you say a plosive sound, you are definitely going to stop and then speak that. And when you are using a fricative like laugh, you are not going to be as, it's not as abrupt in stopping. And therefore, it seems to be slightly softer to listen to. Of course, the best would be mellow and yellow and those kinds of things that will just create a soft effect. As songwriters, you will find that they will think through this in effect and how it sounds. So speech writers and songwriters focus on these. Even jokes are made on these, right? Because jokesters who play with language will try and get someone to say the same thing they are saying. I mean, one of the most popular tricks in most weddings, like the last wedding I went to, one of the things that they just did is get people up and make them do tongue twisters. And it's just hilarious. Irrespective of how many times you know the joke, you know that they're going to make a mistake. It's still when someone tries to say a tongue twister and messes it up, it is fun. It is just super fun. So people try and create new tongue twisters. People try and create patterns in their sound in the brand name that they will try and create. So they will also find those. Now, when we create brand names, when different companies try and create brand names, one of the first things that they try and see is if these sounds in other languages have different kinds of implications. Now, if you do not have a habit of saying r, t, a there in your language, you're most likely not going to be pronouncing r, t, a properly. And so you may need to either live with the mispronunciation as a company, or you may need to want to change your name as a company. All those make differences. Did I answer your question?
Yes,
Too
ma'am.
much, maybe.
Thank you so much.
Ma'am,
Too much, maybe.
I had a
yeah.
when you're speaking about phonology and its application, can its application be considered in like teaching or learning pronunciation, the right pronunciation?
Phonology by itself does not concern itself with pronunciation. Phonology is the sound schema of where what phonetic chart are you following is what phonology really deals with. Yes, it is used in trying to teach pronunciation. For instance, in news anchors, when you're looking at news anchors, very often they are trained in international phonetic alphabet. Nowadays, we don't use received pronunciation, RP, as much. We use the international phonetic alphabet because it gives us a wider scope of soundscapes, right? Like we have the aspirated f, like you would have the aspirated bh, which you don't have in received pronunciation. So bh, Bharat. If an Englishman says Bharat, it is going to be Bharat.
Yeah.
Because the ba, r is just r, and the t is t, Bharat. Right? So you can get how you had only those sounds. If you were speaking Bharat, you only did have the t sound. You had the th sound, which is think ka th. But we are not Bharat. We are Bharat, right? So then the point that comes in with the think and think, it's not right. So if you have the IPA, it gives you a larger range and you're able to then use the aspirated. But they are trained to do that. And very often when they are anchoring and they have new names, then in the bracket, just as in a dictionary, in the bracket, you would be given the sound, right? So if I want to check what is a sound, and I want to understand how I pronounce theme, for instance, and I click on go, then Google will tell me, the first thing Google does is it tells me how it is spelled, right? Like, and it may do that with either Hindi or I could just say that, I want it in English, and then you could have people trying to understand it by going to Oxford Dictionary. And then trying to find out how that word is spelled there. So yes, you could try in brackets in dictionaries, you do see this kind, right? They would have told you how this is spelled, how it is pronounced. So yes, it is used to teach pronunciation, but phonology's purpose is not pronunciation. It's more to look at the effect. The study of it in terms of analysis is to try and see what is the effect. Why has the writer used it in this manner? If there had been some other word, could there have been another effect? So it comes from there. But yes, of course, you can use it to teach proper pronunciation. But I'm not a fan of this proper pronunciation because it intimidates a lot of students from speaking their words. And
ma'am, but actually earlier I mean we were always taught that pronunciation is not very important, but I have increasingly observed this, that it is important, because a simple thing that someone might be speaking the correct words, but they are just not speaking, or rather they are just not emphasizing the right syllables, or phonetically they are not emphasizing the correct this thing, and that's when it becomes very even if the person is saying the right things, to the listener it becomes a little bit different if the listener does not belong to the same whatever language group or any like, you know, for example, the word bin, like from dustbin. So actually for a long time I had been pronouncing, you know, at home we used to pronounce it as dust bean, but it's not
Bean.
dust bean,
Bean.
it's just bin. So that thing, so these small things
But
matter.
what is
and
the
if you-
difference? I mean, I agree, and to that extent, I do understand that there can be miscommunication. But I'm also coming from that entire lot where in America, for instance, you have spellings are discounted. Like you can write psychology as Sikolologi. You could write it as psychology, as that, and you will not get penalized at college level for writing that kind of a wrong spelling. You can't get penalized. You do get penalized in spelling bee tests, and that's the only place that you get penalized, and not all students do spelling bee tests. So if that is the level of spellings in a sense, if you're saying bean and someone does not understand you, there are other ways and means of communicating that point across. But if you focus and tell them, no, it must be bin, then the next time that a person is speaking, there is more consciousness in what they are trying to communicate. Rather than their communication, they will be focusing on their presentation, which then actually kills communication to a larger extent. To a certain extent, if you are listening to a lot of people around you, you will pick up the pronunciation of how they speak, the accent of how they speak, and be able to. So that's a point that everyone has to judge and make, right? Like how much of pronunciation is required and how much is allowed to be manipulated. And again, another question that I often have of anyone who asks, you know, shouldn't we have the right pronunciation? I keep asking them, so which is the right pronunciation? Because Americans speak and pronounce words differently than how Britishers pronounce words. And of course, Indians pronounce words differently from how Britishers pronounce words. So which is the right pronunciation? What do we mean by the right pronunciation? So for instance, schedule and schedule as a very popular example, that becomes problematic. And so you would have to think through those elements. For instance, there is an entire South African dictionary which has about 1,000 words, South African English dictionary, which has about 1,000 words, which where the words are very different. Like they use the word robot for signal, traffic signal. They use the word robot. And so words are different. Anal, you had raised your hand. Did you want to say something? Sorry.
Yes, ma'am. But I just want, okay, I just want to give you a spelling. Spelling is
Mhm.
G-E-N-R-E. G-E-N-R-E.
Sorry?
Yeah.
G-E-N-R-E.
Genre. You can say it as genre, yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly they say
Genre is the
genre,
correct one.
like,
Genre. Yeah.
Genre.
Genre.
Yeah, it's a French, it comes from French word. So
Yeah.
genre.
So is the pronunciation over here important? Acquaintance of the word important? Because if I have to look at this word and it has a very close syllable or other close word which is called as generic, correct?
Yes.
Generic. Okay. So if you look into the spelling, there is a very, very little difference. Okay, very little difference. So I have to a very, very large extent people reading genre as genre. Okay,
Yes.
and genre as genre, and genre if they're reading
Genre, genre,
Yeah.
as I said, where the ER becomes, it is an ER sound and not an RE sound.
Yeah.
Yes. So
So
yes.
yeah, so then
And
we
you
have
will
to
hear this in seminars. Forget, in academic seminars you hear
yeah,
different
even I am
pronunciations.
giving, yeah, even I am giving, I'm like, when I'm thinking about it, I have even heard it here. I'm like at the university level also, this particular
Yeah.
So how now how correct is the person who is talking this? How will a person who is listening to this other person is going to evaluate or should think about the level of the English?
But why would you want to think of the level of English based on
No, I mean, like,
pronunciation?
if I have to stand on a podium in a prestigious,
So
you know,
you could
engagement.
stand on a podium in America and still be saying genre instead of saying genre. What's the big difference in
And
it?
what if I have
Like,
to say
I just
genre?
want to know if you really think that someone in America and Britain don't
No,
use.
no, I don't.
I-
I don't at all associate any importance with that. I'm just looking
Huh.
at the language of it, ma'am. It is not about nationality. Okay, you can be, or
No,
you know,
no,
you
no.
can.
But that's my point. The point is that there will be people from French. So, have you heard Jacinda Ardern give a speech? If you have
Not
heard her
really.
give a speech,
No.
Yeah, hers is
because she's
different.
a New Zealand Prime Minister, right? And
Yes,
when
yes.
she gives a speech, there are certain words that she will say. Um, the way that she will talk about we all, not all, okay, because that's how they pronounce it. New Zealand's language is Maori and English, and the way that they pronounce certain words are very, very different. It has a lot more of an O sound. They will have a lot more of rounding of their lips in many of the words that they speak than the way that we would have. So again, if you go to Ireland, which is right next door to Britain, and they are speaking English, then the way they say time, you know, it is sometimes emphasized with a m and an after the m, and that's the way that nationality rolls, and that's the way that the word is being spelt or misheard or mispronounced or anything. Is there a correct pronunciation?
Ma'am,
Yes.
apart from the pronunciation, ma'am, sometimes certain meanings are also like if I were to listen to the word genre being saying a genre, I may wonder what kind of a word is this, and I may have to
That is
actually
your
go and
job
Google.
to find out as a listener. So
Acha.
I
So
mean,
there is
just as you are finding, no, this is a simple thing, right? Just as you find genre to be genre, if someone says genre, and I've heard that genre. So if someone says genre and you find that is difficult for you, there may be others who have grown up listening to genre who will then, when they come across genre, think, ye kya hai? Some part of understanding information is also about your own ability as a listener or whoever the listener is to also try to understand, try to decode. And it can't be perfect encoding all the time at one level. That's one part of communicative English that is now coming to be in place. Yes, Ritu, you had a point. Go ahead.
No, I think this all issue of the correct pronunciation, especially in India, to my mind, it comes from because English is not our first language. Whereas in New Zealand, Australia, maybe it's Australian English or Canadian, but it's English as such. So we are more conscious. And there are some, I would say, purists in India.
Yeah.
I have a group of friends, you know, they make it very negative when you mispronounce a word.
Correct.
Instead of
Agree.
gently correcting you or, you know, telling you, okay, it is like that, they make it a point to like insult you. So then we become more conscious of that fact.
I agree. But
Yeah,
my point is, if we are not, I agree, Ritu, but my point is as educators, because a lot of MA students in English are educators.
Yes.
If we continue insisting on purism and purist tendencies, we are going to miss out on an entire generation that is going to be traumatized by this problem. The other thing that you're looking at, and a lot of purists will tell me, "Arey, पिछले ज़माने में वो कितना अच्छा English बोलते थे." I am like, BBC रेडियो के अलावा उनके लिए सुनने के लिए कुछ और नहीं था. So if you only listen to BBC radio, you obviously spoke like BBC radio. Now, if you now today have a Netflix where there is Indian English, Australian English, American English, there is a mixture of so many varieties. If you listen to African, films where they speak in a very different way, Black American English, and so on and so forth. How is that person? They are exposed to so many different accents that it becomes very difficult. In fact, we find that purists who are very attuned to a particular dialect, if they're taking IELTS exam, don't score as well in listening because because in listening sometimes you get those regional dialects and they just can't figure out a Cockney accent. And Cockney is right there in Britain, so they can't figure out that, or they can't follow the African English in a sense. And so those are questions that you will have to answer for yourself. I am not answering it, but as I said, I am placing my position as क्या यही important है उसमें, like दुनिया में बहुत कुछ है for us to really
Ma'am, but then
get
newsreaders are made to, neutralize their accents, even though, I'm talking about India only and English news channels, for example, even
everywhere
now.
around the world newsreaders are, but that's a profession. Everyone is not in that profession. This is like agar main, for instance, if you are an actor and like Amir Khan took 1 year of lessons to speak the Bhojpuri accent so-called in PK. He did, right? Or you're an actor like Alia Bhatt is now coming in RRR and she took 1 year lessons on Zoom classes to speak Telugu. But that is a part of your profession, and not that you got it right. Like Chennai Express was where their accents were like, I was like so annoyed about the way that they were accenting it. But that's fine. The point is that you will have to think through in terms of, is that the profession's requirement, and is this what we need to be aiming towards? Again, when you talk about it in terms of neutralizing accent, is different from what you are saying of pronunciation. Accent and pronunciation are not the same. Accent is how I emphasize and thrust on a sound in a particular manner. For instance, the Punjabi accent would be to add a at the end of every word. Timer. Now, Tamil also has the same way of adding but the sound is different in Tamil, where they will be like in a timer, sound versus the sound of Punjabi. And that is accent, where you will immediately add an extra vowel effect, or you will add this extra focus on trying to insert things. I think what I'm while I'm doing it in isolations, if you listen, you can figure out. Ye Gujarati bol raha hai English, ye Marathi bol raha hai English. You can figure this out, and that's not pronunciation. They may have the correct pronunciation, and still you're able to figure out. Like so many of these Malayalis who speak English with the correct pronunciation, you just still figure out this is coming from this region, and that's accent. Pronunciation is about the word in terms of how that is ordered in that in a particular language, in particular region context. And that is, again, as I said, different. English is a universal language. English is spoken by so many people. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't try and correct someone, but the focus is how much of it would I want to emphasize? And how much of it would I want them to say, be aware of sounds, This is about musicality. Ek zamana hota tha jab hum sabko, as Indians, we would all have done dance class, music class, some art class, And today the generation is such that there could be people who have not done one single art class in their life, other than what they do as drawing in school. They would not have done. They won't have done a music lesson. There are so many who would not have done it because it's not part of their thing. So again, we'll have to figure out with times what that happens. Pronunciation is not static. Spellings are not static. Grammar is not static. So it is a dynamic, growing, evolving aspect. And we will have to figure out how that works. The reason I'm emphasizing so much on this is the core of this paper is called Linguistic and Stylistic Analysis. And the entire emphasis of linguistics and stylistics is actually to not tell you what is right, but to only describe what is happening. So you could have wrong English in a lot of your literature. For instance, you have this wrong English, which is colloquial English, which may have a mixture of words from native languages that may come through, which may have incorrect grammar because they are showing a particular class of people or a particular education. Sorry?
No, ma'am, that was some background.
Okay, so they may be doing that. So all that may be coming through in it, and you are supposed to now say, अच्छा इसका effect क्या हो रहा है? जैसे आपने बोला ना कि अगर मैं genre सुनूंगी, तो I am confused, you know. But also, mispronunciations are sometimes very useful because it helps you focus on an idea much better, because ye bol kya raha tha banda, you start thinking that way, and you will never ever perhaps in your life forget that lecture as opposed to the one with a perfect pronunciation. I'm
Yeah.
just saying there can be uses of it, and people in speeches do purposely use this. Like if you are if you're especially comedic writers purposely use mispronunciations, a Vedas comedy or anything will actually have mispronunciations and a joke built around that, because that's how funny and hilarious and memorable it can be. So yeah, I mean, those are things that you will have to, I'm not, again, not saying that you shouldn't teach the right thing, not that you shouldn't try and correct and improve ourselves, but how much we penalize students that and how much we make them self-conscious, that can be differentiated. Or other speakers around us, how they can be differentiated. I have said McDonald's in all possible types of combinations. You know, you can hear if you go to McDonald, McDonald, because Donald Duck, so Donald. You can hear all kinds of permutation combination with McD. Like there are people who will say, give me a Mac burger. And there are people who will make fun of it and say, Apple, you know, should I give you an Apple laptop? And that person still does not get the fact that that was the Mac and this is the Mech in a sense. So you would have all those kinds of jokes made around, and that's fine. Those are also good to have. And then you could think about whether it's important or not. So linguistic and stylistic analysis is to just say कि इसका effect क्या हो रहा है. So I don't know whether I don't think I did this. Since we are on the topic, मैंने last time teaching questions में ये करा था क्या?
Ma'am, actually, why I asked you this because
Yes, I think we
like
did
lot
this
of
form.
the
Last
reason I
semester
reference
we did
news
this
is because in the earlier days, people used to reference the newsreaders and the newspapers in general for vocabulary and pronunciation, because most of the households were not, they did not have knowledge of English. So that was the reference point. That's why I used it as a reference point. So
Yeah, but that is the point. Today,
so till
you
date, people
can't point
reference the
to a news
newsreaders
report.
and
Yeah,
decide
they're
that okay,
not,
this is
right?
standardized
So you
pronunciation.
remember
But
that
it is
Usha
not like
Albuquerque.
I can, yeah, but I can show you BBC. BBC was like the standard
Yeah.
British English, right? Like the
Also Times of
gold
India when it
standard.
came to reading material.
Not
So
Times of India, never Times of India. But yeah, but yes, it's Times of India has always been one of the more populist readings than standard, like Telegraph and Hindu have always been like gold standards in India for English. But the BBC used to be the gold standard that used to be set for English. But if you now listen to BBC, you will find that they have made an active, conscious decision to get in people who are representative of the kind of dialects of, say, a Palestinian English, or people who speak French and English and who speak English with a French accent. Earlier, when I mean I'm like 1980s, you would hear British English only on BBC. Today, when you switch on a BBC 4 or you switch on even radio or television, you will find languages and pronunciations and accents of different people coming through on BBC. So that's another thing that you will have to think about when you are speaking. Today, we are no longer living where we think that there is only one standard English spoken to be spoken. So One of the most famous goof ups that happened was um, there was a very popular washing machine, not washing machine, but yeah, a company that would make washing machines and vacuum cleaners. And in 1990s, they went from Britain. They were very good. They went from Britain to America. Now, America and Britain are said to be countries divided by a common language. And so they went in and said, nothing sucks like, and I won't give you the company's name, you can look it up, but nothing sucks like this vacuum cleaner, except that if you're an American and you know American English, you know what nothing sucks means.
Oh.
It actually is like failure.
Yeah.
Right, that is, it's an idiomatic usage for failure. It can also have sexual connotations, but that's another point altogether. But when a company comes out and says nothing sucks like us, it can have so many fun repercussions to it. And this is what occurs in language, where, of course, the company came in and thought that, you know, we have a tagline that works fantastically and no one misunderstands it in Britain. But of course, when they came to America, everyone chose to misunderstand them. And this is choosing to misunderstand. Obviously, everyone who got the joke got it as, I mean, the company was not saying that we are a failure, but they chose to think in that way, make a joke and think through. So these are other elements of where communication comes in. So if you're teaching communication, one of the things that we teach bankers when they go to rural areas is it's correct English to say it is I at the door. That's the correct English. It's me who is speaking on the phone. It's me is wrong English because it is I who is speaking. So it is the correct English, the grammatical absolute correctness. It's I, except who says it? Only in absolute grammar Nazis are going to be looking at it. So even if you know the right English, we tell them that when you go down, वहां पे जो बोली है उसके तरह बोलना सीखो. तो गलत भी है तो गलत बोलो. And we actually ask for people to, even if there is a mispronunciation, because that language connect is actually a better connect to make. So if we get that point across in terms of communication, people pick up languages. If you go towards tourist areas, those tourist guides know how to switch from an American accent to a British accent to a French accent faster than even some of the best, language guides can do. Because that is unki rozi roti wahan se aati hai. Whereas we may struggle more, and they have listened and picked it up on the go in that sense. So you would have to think through ki kaise hai, what is the context, and then deal with it. So this is a poem. This is called Listen, Mr. Oxford Dunn. Dunn is a Black American slang for Dean, actually. Right? And so, but Don is, he said, listen, me not know Oxford Don, me a simple immigrant from Clapham Common. I didn't graduate, I immigrate. But listen, Mr. Oxford Dunn, I am a man on the run, and a man on the run is a dangerous one. I ain't have no gun, I ain't have no knife, but mugging the Queen's English is the story of my life. I don't need no axe to split up your syntax. I don't need no hammer to mash up your grammar. I'm warning you, Mr. Oxford Dunn, I am a wanted man, and a wanted man is a dangerous one. Actually, man should be pronounced as mon. And that is the poem. This is written by someone who is called John Agard, a very celebrated British poet. And he wrote this poem to talk about the Black immigrant experience in, of course, in Britain, in that sense. And this obviously has a lot of incorrect grammar in it, mispronunciations that are guided through misspellings in it, and a lot of these elements of using me not know Oxford Dunn, which is obviously wrong English. I'm a man on D run. D is wrong spelling. I ain't have no gun. double negatives is wrong English and wrong spellings. Play on words like mugging the Queen's English. It's a pun. You could be mugging as in by hearting the Queen's English, or you could be mugging as in assaulting the Queen's English, because you could be mugging someone by attacking them.
Ma'am, but that's the
or
difference, I
imitating.
guess.
Sorry?
Mugging is by hearting in British English, whereas mugging is assaulting in American English. That's what I feel. So it is like that
No,
way.
no, it is also
Same.
assaulting in things. Also, mugging is in British English is it is to mug someone is to imitate them, to
Okay.
make things. So to make fun of it in a satirical way, it can be used in a satire, or it can be just used as is. So he's trying to imitate them. He's trying to things. It's a play on words, but yes, I don't need no axe to split up your syntax, hammer, grammar, and all of it. So basically, it was a poem on the trying to talk about how there is language that just forces them to speak in a particular way. And this is a very celebrated poem on grammar, on the right grammar, and on it. And so you could think of these elements, but linguistic and stylistic analysis just looks at this and does not say, oh, he used wrong English, but will say, oh, he used the wrong English. This is the effect on the reader. This could be the purpose that he has had. What is the purpose? Let me find out. So it is primarily to identify for you, not just the grammar, to be able to analyze the grammar, but also to then say what is the effect that it has on the reader, and whether that effect serves the purpose of the writer in presenting it in that manner. So did the presentation work? For instance, if I want to disgust you, if I want to arouse disgust in you, I need to act in a manner that is disgusting. Otherwise, how will you be disgusted? So if an audience has to be horrified, they have to be shown something that will make them frightened. Otherwise, why will they be frightened? And that is something that comes through in linguistic and stylistic analysis. It's just trying to tell you how this can be done, how it is affecting, and whether it really serves the purpose or not. It does not tell you what is right and wrong. Linguistic and stylistics are not really concerned with what is right and wrong. That's not their job at all. But you can use it in order to teach someone, hey, this is what happens. If someone is speaking the wrong English, this is what happens. You could use it to teach them that. Okay, that's almost 1 hour of me lecturing on something that has nothing to do with the exams.
Ma'am, but it was really interesting.
Yes, I guess. It's always also my soapbox, because I keep saying, I don't know if you teach high school children, but I teach a lot of college kids. And the number of children who are in places like IIT who feel that they are lacking only because they can't speak a language like English, and who feel diffident and who feel insecure and who go to the level of committing suicide because they're not able to follow a language, is just, it just kind of bugs me, not bugs me, but it breaks heart, but it also annoys me a lot. It angers me, because it's like, everything was right with them. It was just one language that they didn't have enough and adequate exposure to. Society should take the blame for not giving them exposure. They should not be feeling penalized for not speaking the right way. But that's how they're made to feel, that their pronunciation is not right, their spellings are not right. So you would have to think through how you want to make that change in a way. And that's another part of it that you could look at. I will say if Dabbawalas can go to Harvard and teach Harvards how to do this in their broken tuta futa English, We should just celebrate tuta futa English also. And linguistic and stylistic analysis says that tuta futa English also serves a purpose because it has an effect of bringing you to the realism of the life and so on and so forth. Literature says just speak the language as it is in that community. What we are doing now is actually just moving on to from stylistic analysis, because these are the key points of stylistic analysis. The other element that I really wanted to touch upon in stylistic analysis was setting, which I had spoken about even earlier. So I'm not going to focus on it a lot because we were talking of how the setting could be complementary or not complementary. Another that you would have is tone and mood. So can you tell me the difference between tone and mood? What could be the difference between tone versus mood? What is tone? What is mood?
Tone is more about the quality of the words that are spoken, how they are spoken, and mood actually is more emotional.
Whose
Pertaining
emotion?
of the speaker, of course, or maybe of the situation.
So let me give you an example of how it could be that the tone and mood are different. If you watch comedy, it's one of the best ways to understand it. You know, if someone comes and they're like, oh, this is the end of the world, and you know, it's so bad, I can't believe this is happening to me, this is like I'm so dead. And then you ask them what, and they're like, my nail chipped.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, so they are, what is their emotion, the speaker's emotion?
Ma'am, then that's what it's seriousness, and the last line is the punchline. So basically, it diffuses the seriousness or the buildup that was caused.
Yeah, but the person is serious, right? The speaker is serious. The character is serious. The character is like, this is the end of the world. This is so tragic. I am so traumatized.
Yeah.
The listener's mood, that is mood. The listeners is finding it ridiculous, finding it humorous, is not sympathetic.
Okay.
And that is mood. The tone is that of seriousness. The mood is that of levity, of humor. And that is how you could have a difference between tone and mood. That's one of the best ways of, or the most startling ways of explaining how tone and mood may be different. Because the listener, the audience may have a different mood based on the speaker, the character's, you know, tone. The reactions may be different. They could be complementary as well, where, for instance, Meena Kumari crying in 1970s films had the audience crying in 1970s films. And today, when a 2000, in 2000, if you watch a Meena Kumari, you are annoyed by her crying in that sense, a 1960s films or a 1970s. If that is the difference that you would have between tone and mood. The tone is what the person is trying to say, the characters are saying, what the text is evidencing for you. The mood is what is created as a result of the words, the presentation, but also the context that you understand of as a listener, as an audience, as a reader, that even within that, there could be a difference that comes through that you understand of, and then react to. So the mood is basically audience to a larger extent, and the tone is basically the speaker or the character to the larger extent. So the author's words set the tone, but the mood may not be complementary. The mood can be complementary. The hero, heroine are crying, the audience is also crying. The hero, heroine are celebrating, the audience is also celebrating. It could also be, the hero is crying and the audience is laughing. It can also be that. It can be a contrast. Or it can be slightly different, where the hero is crying or laughing about something, but the audience is actually thinking, thoughtful. The mood is different. Do you get the difference?
Yes. So
Yes,
the
Yes,
mood,
ma'am.
the mood would be
And
like if out of 5 audience, 5 people, everybody can have a different mood depending on how they relate to the tone of the character or the actor.
yes, 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 yes. Um, so great films actually allow you to go away with, you know, different people having taken away different things. But if you're watching something like a Rohit Shetty, the tone is so over the top that if you did not leave your brains out and come into the theater, you are going to go away saying, "Ye kya movie tha?" But otherwise, all of us have had the same mood. All of us have had the same emotional experience to that moment, which is of laughter, levity, over the topness, etc. So if you're watching a Kapil Sharma show, it's such an but it's an over the top kind of a show, and there is only one mood that they allow the audience to have, which is you must laugh like Archana Puran Singh, supposedly, right? So that is the kind of thing that they are allowing. So the tone that they use is so over the top that there is only one way that you can react to it, or you don't watch the show. The subtler comedies, you know, someone like a Veer Das, because he's doing so many shows right now, but someone like a Veer Das would allow you to, some of us would laugh, some of us would, you know, just smile, some of us would think, and some of us would get angry with what he's saying. So that would be your comedy that comes in from things. So comedians are best at understanding how tone and mood are very different. Um, um, Emotional dramas, to a large extent, only the tone and mood are always mostly in sync. Like you will feel sorry when the hero is in a sorry state, you will feel happy when the hero is in a happy state, and those are some things that you will set up. Comedy films are the ones where your tone and mood can be very, very varied, and so that's one of the better ways and easier ways to understand how they can be varied. And that's an easier way of understanding, that will tell you the difference between tone and mood much better. So this is something that I wanted to point out. Yeah. You may get questions in this tone versus mood, such as the example that I gave you. You know, the heroine came out and said, why am I saying heroine? Maybe the hero came out and said, "Oh my God, this is the end of the world. Why is this happened to me? It only happens to me ever. I have such an important show, and just before the show, this had to happen. How can I go out and face the world with this?" And someone has asked what has happened, and can you see there is a chip of nail paint, or that is chipped off? My nail paint is chipped off my nails. Can you see this? It's such an important thing. And so now the tone and the mood, are they complementary? Are they contrasting? Are they the same? Will the audience and the person feel the same tone? Complementary need not mean that they are the same, right? And are they absolutely going to be different? You know, opposites, not that they're parallel, but they're opposites in a sense. So those are kinds of questions that you may get also. Or there could be words used. What is a tone? Tone is serious, and mood is also serious. Tone is serious, mood is of humor. Tone is humor and mood is humor. Tone is humor, mood is serious. You know, you could get questions like that. Okay. The last part of really your paper is, to some extent, this academic writing sample. So we take a piece of academic writing and we give that sample to y'all in the old pattern of the exam. And we would ask you questions such as, formulate the thesis statement, which is what is the text about, right? So what is the text about? or formulate, identify what are the main ideas in the passage, what are the sub ideas in the passage, identify if the passage is coherent or how can it be made more coherent. Is there an introduction to the passage? What is the introduction like? Is there a conclusion in the passage? What is the conclusion? What is the role of the conclusion? That could be the question those are the kinds of questions we may ask. So I'm just putting in the kinds of questions that you could get asked. The thesis statement, but it is more as a title sentence, right? It could be that you are looking at what is the passage about, but you don't say this passage is about, you just write it as an introductory statement. You just write it as a summary statement. Example, Rumi's poetry is filled with real world examples that have a universal appeal. If the passage was all about Rumi's poetry and what his poetry is about, then you write it as Rumi's poetry is filled with real world examples that have a universal appeal. So the entire passage, is about that. Or you could get asked questions such as list ideas and sub ideas. Or you could get asked questions such as what makes the passage coherent, or how can the passage be made more coherent? So this goes back to unit 1, where you had this question on coherence and cohesion in last semester. And you have to focus on how is the organization of information? What is the explanation? Has it used exemplification? Has it used listing of ideas? Are the words simple? Are there linking words used? Is there a clear articulation of idea at the beginning or the end, which tells you what the passage is about? What is the kind of length of explanation given to an idea? Or is there too much of repetition and so the passage becomes very wordy and difficult to understand? What is the role of introduction? Is there an introduction in the passage? And if yes, then what is the role of introduction? Like, is it giving a summary, or is it giving you, is it just there to hook the reader's attention and not really play any important part other than just hooking the reader's attention? Presenting the layout, is it there in order to tell you what I'm going to talk about, how I'm going to talk about it? Is there a conclusion in the passage? What is the role that the conclusion plays? Is it trying to summarize the entire idea? Is it trying to say, oh, you could have therefore, and therefore it gives you a conclusion, a new perspective, an argument that is being made in the conclusion? Or is it to lay out what next should be done? Because sometimes conclusions also work in that manner. So what is the role of the conclusion, if there is a conclusion? These were the kinds of questions that we would ask. Now, how does it translate into multiple choice questions? I will explain, but I'll just first take you through one analysis, sample analysis. Yeah. Should I do this? Okay, this is already there as an answer, academic writing sample 4, and I have given an answer. So I'm not going to take through this. What I'm going to do is go through a passage where you don't have the entire answer, perhaps. So let's take up this academic writing sample 2. Please read the sample. I'll give you 5 minutes. And then let's take us through the questions. You don't have to by heart it, you just have to kind of read and figure out. What do you think the passage is about? What are the main ideas in the passage? Those are the 2 questions you keep in mind. What is the passage about? If you had to formulate a thesis statement, what would be the thesis statement? And what are the main ideas in the passage?
Ma'am, the ideas of the passage and a thesis statement could somewhat be the same.
Yeah. Yes, the idea of the passage and the thesis statement should be, I mean, the thesis statement is what the passage is about. So obviously the idea would be
Okay.
that. So let's just go to the next one. What are the, I mean, one of the ways to try and identify all of this would be where you try and take up you try and take up these kinds of questions where they are saying, I have put in two different perspectives, right? So one is it's examining relationship between effect-driven graphic novels and their mythological sources. Female authors of mentioned novels are weaving potential for feminist thought. It could be that you're writing something that says examination of two graphic novels by female authors and their relationship with mythological source material. A sub point being Arni's Sita's Ramayan and Patil's Adi Parva. Or it could be that you're writing to analyze said graphic novels and bring forward a time of feminist thought. What do you think of these are a good sample of main idea? These three.
Ma'am, the last one makes a
Yes.
more
Yes,
because
ma'am. The last.
ma'am, the last one is spoken like a conclusion. It appears like a conclusion, and it's a strong statement, you know. So the last one is also could also be the beginning to the next, you know, whatever follows the next para or the next matter of the
Which,
paper.
when you say last one, it is you're saying
The
the
female
examined
authors of-
relationship between effect-driven graphic novels and their mythological sources?
No,
I-
female authors of mentioned novels are viewing potential for feminist thought. So my
Right. But isn't that too general? Is that what this passage is really about?
ma'am,
Isn't the
this is
passage
like the
about, you know,
first opening
they
lines.
are
It feels
retelling the
like.
mythological stories from a feminist point of view.
Is that what the passage is trying to say?
And then
Ma'am, actually,
the comparison between the graphic version and the original story.
Are they comparing?
No, ma'am. Similarities. Actually, these could be the opening lines.
Comparing in the sense that they are examining the relationship, how it has changed. What is the difference possibly in
Or
the
probably
narration style?
Yeah, or probably they're looking at a different characterization of the entire novel. We are not looking at the main characters or the from the previous edition, whoever was narrating. The entire narrator is changed, the characterization is changed, perspective is changed. So I think it's a completely different thing. They aren't really comparing. They have although it's like it's something which you already know. The kind of a parallelism, ma'am, where everybody knows everything, but still it's a different perspective. So you know what has happened in the setting, you know what has happened in the story, but the only thing is nobody heard this particular character. Probably that was
But that's not what I mean, what you are starting to do is analyze whether the stories are good or not, or whether this is worth reading or not. That's not what this exercise will be about. The exercise will be about trying to say, what is this paragraph telling you?
ma'am, these could be the opening lines of a paper or an essay which speaks about
That's
how
fine.
the roots of feminism in
That's not what you are going to be asked at all. Going to be asked like, what is the, I mean, fortunately, you won't have to make the thesis statement. You will be given choices of thesis statement, which is why I wanted to come here and ask which one of this is better. Ruby, you had raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Ma'am, so is it about a shift from male-centered mythological narratives when focuses on more on feminist thought? Is that the thing we are going for?
Who is the author? Okay, let me ask you a very simple question. Is the author located in the passage?
no.
Not really.
Is the author not located in the passage?
No, it is, I argue that by moving between authentic representation. So in the end, it is the
Thank
author,
you.
right?
Yes. So I argue is very clearly, focused upon. Let me give it a different color. Yeah, so is definitely focused upon in the passage, right? I argue. So now what is that person arguing?
Ma'am, actually, they are trying to prove that the roots of this feminism could be found in the mythology as well. So it's not a new thought. So basically, this is like just a
Are they
precursor
saying
for that
that?
thought.
No, there are
This
no
is just a
roots in.
precursor. These are
See,
the
what is
beginnings
happening
of
here
that.
is, I think, Roshali, what is happening here is the narrative by Samhita Arni, okay, and the other writer, they are writing from female point of view, and earlier the no, the mythological stories were written from a male point of view. So now they have made the Sutradhar also Ganga. Earlier, if we see the Mahabharat as the TV one, it
Ritu,
was
I
Samar.
get that, but my point is that the last line is the beginning of the next para, which is going to be like, it's a build up for a viewpoint which is put forward that the feminism
don't
is
care.
not.
No, ma'am, can you just rephrase the question? What we are supposed to just look at
What
this
is
para?
it that, yeah, so in this, what is this paragraph really about? So don't tell me whether the novels are good or bad, or what they might be doing or not doing, but what is this paragraph trying to do? What is this paragraph? If
Trying
you
to
had to
analyze the
summarize this
writing styles.
paragraph, you have,
Ma'am,
yes.
ma'am,
So if you
are
had
the-
to summarize this paragraph, what is the summary of the paragraph going to be? So
The
it is a
writer is
comparison
trying
of writing styles. Is it a
No.
comparison of writing
Similarities
styles?
actually between the content and
How
then
the
linking it to
story is.
feminism.
Ma'am, more from a woman's point of view. I know it is general, but that is the gist that I am getting.
Is it that they're trying to change the perspective of the people who have been looking at it in a particular way, both the texts of Ramayana and Mahabharata?
Is the passage saying that they are trying to change others' perspectives?
They are presenting it from a different perspective.
But that is the two authors.
Yes.
The two authors whose books are being analyzed by this writer. What is the writer trying to do?
He is trying to compare the original and the material which has been, the books which have been written by these two authors, and trying to find the shift. How is the shift happening?
Right, because that is very clearly given in the last paragraph, last
Authentic
sentence.
representation and
Tracing the concept metaphor of weaving and unraveling, because that is explained earlier, that they are both bringing in the old things and they are shifting the that by making Ganga the Sutradhar, etc. It's an unraveling.
So, ma'am, this will be the
through
main
the two
idea.
texts. So through the two texts, sorry.
Ma'am, this is going to be the main idea of the.
Yeah, this will be the main idea is basically given to you by the words, is signaled to you by the words I argue, right?
Okay.
Because that is the major portion. Like, why am I going to be arguing something that I don't believe in and what I want you to agree with, in the sense, right? So the examination of the two novels, what those two novels are about, is all given. But the main thing that they are trying to do is I argue that by trying to use authentic representation, but also very complex medium. And what is a complex medium? The graphic novel. By critiquing, by being critical, because that's what he has explained, right? That they have disrupted conventional misunderstandings, understanding of the male-centered thing, and saying that these writers are trying to further feminist thought, right? I'm just paraphrasing out here. Now, the point that you talked about as female authors of the mentioned novels weaving potential for feminist thought, and when you identified that the last one is the one that seems to be really lending ground, you will have to think about, does it really explain as a summary what this entire paragraph is doing? It is definitely repeating the last thrust, but is it adequate enough? Is it enough to write that, just that much? Definitely not the other one, just above it. Examines relationships between affect-driven graphic novels and their mythological sources, because that's not really what the passage is trying to do. And that's not really the main argument of the author. To analyze set graphic novels and bring forward a time of feminist thought, it's definitely not bringing forward a time of feminist thought. It is, so it can't be the second one. Examination of two graphic novels by female authors and their relationship with mythological source material. This is very similar to the third option. So can't be that. And so when you were saying that of the given options, the fourth one is the best, it was absolutely bang on. But I also wanted to take you through the journey of finding out why the fourth one may be better, even though it is very generic. Because when you look at the others, you realize ye bahut hi zyada narrow hai. Did you get that difference?
Yes, ma'am.
And this is important because this could be a kind of question that you get in the paper. You can be given, well, not this long a passage, but you could be given a slightly, half of this passage length at least, and be asked which of this explains the thesis statement. You can also be asked how many ideas are there in this. Are there very many ideas in this passage? Let me ask you this question in another way. Is Arni Sita's Ramayan a main idea of the passage?
No.
Thank you.
No, ma'am.
No.
The
Yeah.
main idea
So
would
that
be
could
the
be a kind
discussion
of question. Yeah. So you can be asked a question such as the passage's main idea is the use of graphic novels and to present mythology. Arni Sita's Ramayan, Amrita Patil's Adi Parva, Arni Sita's Ramayan and Amrita Patil's Adi Parva, and storytelling techniques, so which of this is the main idea of the passage? Which one of these is a main idea of the passage?
Storytelling
technique.
I will just repeat. The first example is the use of graphic novels to represent mythology. To represent mythology, and please understand, I now play on represent and represent as pronunciation, but also as fun. The use of graphic novels to present mythology. The use of, Arni Sita's Ramayan and Amrita Patil's Adi Parva, second option. And the third option, storytelling techniques. Which of these is the main idea?
So Arni's Ramayana and Adi
first one.
Parva cannot be the options because they are two separate, okay?
But they are, they could both be part of a main idea, right?
First option.
But if they're given as separate options and there is only one right choice.
No. I gave it as one option only.
Okay.
I gave you only 3 options.
Ma'am, I think it will be the first one.
First option.
First one.
It will be the first one because the other two are actually examples. Arni's Sita's Ramayan and Amrita Patil Adi Parva are examples. And yes, if it had been given to you as B and C, that would have been easy to eliminate altogether, saying ki agar ek koi chunna to ye to nahi ho sakte. But storytelling techniques are about the storytelling techniques of these two authors. And so it was not a main idea of the passage. It was just telling you how those authors are presenting Ramayana and Mahabharata. So obviously the writing itself is talking about two things, graphic novels and mythology. And how mythology can get represented in graphic novels. That's what it is really talking about. And that is where and feminism being foregrounded. There are two main ideas: feminism being foregrounded and graphic novels through the thing. So yes, those are the kinds of questions that you can get asked. uh, I am going to take you through this, even though I have the answers, maybe because I have the answers. um, let's just take us through this. So just read this. This is an easier sample, but this is more likely the sample you will get. This is very difficult. You won't get this as a sample because you need that length to make sense. You could get the other sample. Okay, so let me go to Pax Indica. Yeah. You take about 5 minutes to read it. We'll keep coming back to it. We will answer all the questions.
I'm done reading.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so I hope everyone has managed to finish reading. It's 5 minutes.
Yes,
Yeah. So the first question that you could get is there an introduction in the passage? And I hope the answer is yes in your head, because I have obviously given away the answer. But they could ask you, you know, how it plays. So one of the questions that you could ask is there an introduction in the passage because it hooks the reader's attention? Is there an introduction in the passage because it explains, it lays out what the passage is going to be about? Is there an introduction because it summarizes the main idea of the passage? Or there is no introduction? So you have 4 kinds of questions, right? Now, which one would you choose? There is no introduction.
Ma'am, I would go
Yeah.
with the second one.
it summarizes the idea.
It explains the idea. Does it give you an
The whole one.
overview of the entire passage?
Yes, ma'am.
Of the entire passage?
Just the introduction.
Just the first 2 lines, sentences?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
For the
So
whole
it doesn't. It actually does not tell you what the entire passage is really going to focus upon in that sense. What it does, it talks about the key concerns that Tharoor raises, and you know, which is elaborated upon later. But it does not really give you an entire overview. But you won't get those closed questions ideally. But yes, you would have to think about these as elements. So the second one would be the correct answer.
Yeah, option 2, right, ma'am?
Yeah, option 2. One of the other questions that you could be asked is, which of the following is true of the given passage? And there could be the thesis statement of the passages. You know, you have options given, or you could be that it is easy to identify because there is repetition of ideas. It is easy to identify because there is an introduction given in the passage. It is easy to identify because the conclusion tells us what the passage is about. The thesis statement is easy to identify because one idea is explained in detail in the passage. What would be your option?
The last one, ma'am.
It's not just one idea is explained in detail in the passage, is it?
Line 1 is talks about soft powers until the end. He's just trying to convince people as to that is the only thing what we have, which we can probably present to the world as compared to anybody else.
So one other aspect in academic writing that you will have to keep in mind is this passage is not about Tharoor's book Pax Indica. This passage is about someone writing on Pax Indica. It's a review of Pax Indica.
Yeah.
So is that what this passage is doing? Is it only about soft power? That's the question.
No, it is also about what India lacks.
Mm.
When it says it doesn't have the military might or the money, so why it needs to focus on soft power to leverage its position?
And in the beginning, it actually talks about size, trade, and its influence in the world. So soft power is just one of the aspects, and then that aspect has been, you know, expanded upon in the second paragraph. But the first paragraph actually has more than one idea. It's not just soft power that comes in. Pax Indica is Indian peace, and Indian peace has varied connotations. And one of it is, of course, the fact that it is talking about soft power. So the way that you would write it or choose it, I mean, of course, I am hypothesizing out here. But if you had a question, then it would be that it's not just the conclusion, because the conclusion in the second paragraph, it's only one part of whatever is being given in the first paragraph that is explained. So there is no conclusion in this passage. It is not really about just one idea being expanded upon in the passage. It is about the fact that the introduction kind of lays the ground for you. So just as we identified, is there an introduction in the passage and what role it plays? The thesis statement also comes from the beginning of the passage in terms of it. So why was it easy for you to do so? Maybe because of the introduction, which very clearly says that this is about Shashi Tharoor's Pax Indica as a book. That's the kind of things that you could have, right? You could be, there is one main idea in the passage about Pax Indica of Tharoor's positing that India's soft power can be strategically used to improve her standing in the world and transform domestically. But there are other aspects that he, of course, tries to talk about. The other kind of question that you can be asked is words like colloquialism. I hope it is clear. I'm sorry, I can't. I mean, if I had to type that much, I will have to. So you could maybe zoom in on your own screens. That will help you expand better. If you're on laptops, it is fine. But the use of Indian colloquialisms as Sangamitra. So there could be questions in academic analysis that ask you questions such as, are there colloquialisms used? Why have there been colloquialisms used? So academic writing can also become a kind of reading comprehension passage, the way that we generally would get, right? So this is how the questions will be framed for academic writing. If you had to write this as an answer on your own, it was going to be a lot more difficult. Actually, multiple choice makes this much easier, because now you just have to choose from the given options. And you typically will, I mean, I'm not saying everything will be easier, but typically you will find a lot of things easier to do because it is multiple choice questions, because we can't ask you on a lot of other things. So we will be asking you questions on, is there an introduction? Is there a conclusion? Does the use of colloquialism, I mean, what makes this passage difficult to read? So if I was, where was the question types? Yeah. So, there could be aspects such as the use of the absence of linking words makes the passage difficult to read. The use of colloquialisms makes the passage difficult to read. No, the passage is not difficult to read because, words are explained in brackets. The passage is not difficult to read because the concept is very simple. For instance, if I give you that as these are the four options, the passage is very difficult to read because there is colloquialisms used. The passage is very difficult to read because there is an absence of linking words. The passage is not difficult to read because colloquialisms are explained in brackets, because difficult words and others concepts are explained in the passage. The passage is not difficult to read because just one idea is explained at detail. Which one would you choose?
I would choose the last one.
One idea.
There is only one
In
idea
detail.
explained and explained in detail.
3, ma'am.
And so those make it slightly difficult. I get it. But what happens with 3 is that you're right, that 3 is definitely there in the passage. But when you take up the fourth option includes the third option. There is Pax Indica explained, and that is explained in detail. And the same thing with colloquialism. The colloquialism words are therefore explained in detail. So the third option is kind of subsumed by the fourth option. So yes, the fourth option would be the right one. when you have two similar options or two close options, try and see which one will be more fitting based on the question. Sometimes the questions can be tricky. Sometimes the questions can be which is a specific strategy. For instance, the question could have been, what is a specific strategy that the author has used to make it easy to understand? Then you could say the use of linking words. That could be given as an option. The use of linking words, the explanation of colloquial words, the use of native language, and focusing on one idea, है ना? What is the specific, not focusing on one idea, I won't put that in. The use of hyphens to indicate additional ideas, which is a specific strategy that makes it easy to understand. I'm quite impressed with myself in terms of coming up with choices, but okay.
I agree.
But I was just thinking someone's going to tell me to repeat it and I have to think about it. The use of colloquialisms, the use of native language, the explanation of colloquialisms in the passage, the use of linking words, and that was, I think, the first option I gave. But anyway, the use of linking words and the use of hyphens. Yeah, the use of hyphens to indicate additional ideas.
I would say use of hyphens because I don't see any linkages. Basically, he's not using.
There is no linking words.
linking
Absolutely,
words.
Yes.
there is no
And he's
linking
actually
word.
using tharur all the time to sort of emphasize on tharur. So there are no linkages. It's like a
Like there is
book.
no linking words. It is just one word like so, all that remains. But other than that, there is no linking word really used here. So obviously that answer is out.
And
now
not
you
even
have
pronouns for that matter, like linking pronouns.
Not really. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
So the one idea,
India
and
and
also the
tharur are
hyphen,
repeated ad infinitum. Yes.
The hyphen for the additional ideas, wherein you are mentally prepared to read, like mentally prepared at a certain point of time that okay, a new idea is going to get introduced.
Yeah, so, and it is very typical of the way it has been written. Generally, hyphens are not used for this particular purpose, but here you can completely. And if it is there, hyphen is there in the option, I'm sure we will think like Vishali.
लेकिन इस passage में hyphen important था कि जो words, colloquial words को explain किया वो important था.
Now that
See, native language is there. Ajat Shatru and Sangamitra. Those are the colloquial words. Now was that important or was, yeah.
Because without the hyphen,
Pax Indica, Pax is also a foreign word. It's a colloquial word.
Ma'am, actually, I was thinking more like if you exclude these words, like the colloquial words, Ajat-Shatru and all. So it's like just building upon an idea. If you exclude that, even then the passage reads well, not very well, but you can make sense of it. So that way I did not choose the option with.
So the point is that what is the strategy that the person has used to make the to make the passage readable to the or to make it more comprehensible to the things. That was a question. So then yes, the use of explanation of the foreign words is more important than the use of the hyphen, because hyphen दो जगह पे use किया है, and the second place that it has been used, you didn't even have to use the hyphen, and it was not really an additional point. I mean, the first part where it is used from trade, rise, and cultural thing, that is an additional point. So all that remains to be used as soft power is not really an additional point. It is the most important point. So therefore, not the fourth option of hyphen.
Okay.
Which is why when I was saying it in my own head, I was like, I'm quite impressed with myself because that's a very tricky question. Because when the option said that it is the use of hyphens for additional points, then both of those hyphens should have given you additional points, and the second hyphen does not actually give you additional points. I'm telling you this from also the strategy of how most of us, when we are conceiving close options, this is how we will try and conceive close options. This is how exactly what goes on in our head, because we have to justify the answer. Kabhi RTI nikla, dala kisi ne. That is the justification that has to come through. So this is how we think about it. So you will have to say, does it overall fit in? Everywhere does it fit in or not? And the use of colloquial words, native words, is obviously jarring. Like Ajit Shatru is, maybe someone may be able to come up with it, but most everyone is going to be stumped by what it means, or Pax Indica for that matter, in that sense. So it has been helpful to have the explanations.
Ma'am,
So
can I be
these are the, yeah?
Can I be honest? When I read the word tharur, I just eliminated these words. I said, okay, he's going to talk about this any which ways. So I did not even look at them.
Ma'am, they
Yeah, that is obviously a possibility you could do. Like, how can tharur be simple anyway? So yes, but the point is that the author is not tharur. The author is
No.
reviewing tharur. See, this is one thing you will have to do in academic writing, and this is a difficult question. There is a reason we are doing this in semester 2 and not in semester 1. In semester 2, this is more difficult for you to get, that there is going to be a writer being spoken about in the text, but the person writing is a different person. It is a review of the book, and that you will have to keep in mind. It's generally going to be a review of the book, or a poem, or a short story, or something like that. And so, like all of these samples, because academic writing mein kya hoga? Academic writing mein likhenge hi kya log? They will write on this only. They will write on, maine ye kitab padhi, and what am I writing? I am reviewing it, or I am arguing for something. So that is where they will take it from. So where do we take these write-ups from? Is from reviews. We take these from research papers, right? And then we ask questions on those. That is how we actually, that is our sources of where we get these passages from. And student writing samples. But abhi to student writing samples hai hi nahi, so we will go to research papers or articles or answers, older answers, and then see how was it writing. So all of them will be having a review kind of sense.
Ma'am,
Does this make sense? Yes.
ma'am, when you were asking the question about conclusion, whether this passage has a conclusion or not. So at that point of time, we like when you
This passage does, yeah. This passage, yes.
So this does not. That is what we came like. Our this thing was that this does not have a conclusion, like in the previous passage. So when you asked this question, till that point of time, I was convinced that this does not have a conclusion. But after you highlighted this, I sort of felt like it was dual. This could be interpreted that till a certain point of time, he's going to contradict Tharur, and hence the last hyphen is also like attention grabbing hyphen, wherein he says no. So that is all that remains. So I'm not contradicting Tharur. I am with Tharur on this. So something like that.
Yeah, but the point is that what happens, and this is why I was saying, Tharur advocates that India use soft power to the hilt, is primarily there are multiple points that have been introduced in the first paragraph. And of that, only one of them has been actually expanded upon in the second paragraph. And, we don't know, for instance, apart from Pakistan, India has decent relations with most of the world. It cannot afford to militarily engage and establish presence, etc. We don't know ki ye kiska viewpoint hai. We don't know whether it is Tharur in Pax Indica who has said it, or whether whoever this falana writer is, who is reviewing, is it this person's point of view? We don't know. That is one of the, this is the kind of thing that happens in indirect speech, hai na? Where you don't know whose point of view it is.
Yeah.
And it is free indirect speech, therefore. And that is why you're not able to say whether there is a conclusion or not. But you definitely from the introduction are able to deduce that this person is going to be looking at Pax Indica of Zarur. So that's why I said it becomes complex. And that is why this has been in semester 2, is because teaching questions was actually easier to do. Teaching questions is basically जो समझ में भी नहीं आया उस पे भी question पूछ सकते हैं, or you just have to find out how will you focus on meaning making questions, how will you focus on form based questions, what will be a form based question, what is a meaning making question. And the idea was that you will focus on meaning making questions. But here the reading itself is very complex. Academic writing is very complex because of the reading strategy. एक तो पढ़ना है कि बॉस ये लिख कौन रहा है, क्या लिख रहा है. Then there is a writer within the writer, right? So that becomes like, it's like Inception, but only stage 2 stages of Inception.
Yes, ma'am. Understanding where to stop thinking. I don't know now.
Yeah, it becomes that. But overall, I'll tell you that MCQs on academic writing, I think, are fairly simple. They just, you need to have looked at the question carefully. And maybe that's why I gave you 2 question types. One is that what makes the passage easy, but what is a specific strategy, then you may, there may be a slight variation in the answers. Again, what are the options given? Because there may be that the best option is not given. So जो 4 options बचे हैं उसमें से कौन सा best है, that you will have to deduce and find out. But other than that, this is not very difficult. In fact, other than phonology, which is unit 1, typically all the rest of it should not be very difficult for you guys, because a lot of it is just about comprehension. It's just that much. So ideally, this should not be a difficult paper and should help you score better. Because clause analysis, last time clause analysis tha, teaching questions bhi thoda mushkil tha. Then you had to know all those terms of coherence, cohesion and all of it. But इस बार आपको फिर भी वैसे ही वाले questions आएंगे. You will get a few questions from like semester 1, where I think you had questions like identify the figure of speech.
Yeah. Last term.
Yes, ma'am, we had
And
this
you
question.
had questions such as whose point of view is it? है ना,
No, ma'am.
वैसे वाले
Yes,
questions तो
ma'am.
आपके
A little bit about even the narrator and who's.
point of view किसका है तो पूछा था, because we had done free and indirect speech, उसमें point of view ही आता है. So that was the only way to ask. We had also asked questions on indirect speech है कि direct speech है वगैरह, but we had also asked questions on point of view.
Ma'am, actually,
Is the author present in the passage?
There were multiple sets of questions.
But question types, question types were similar in the sense that,
so if I get on stative and dynamic verbs,
located in the author, yeah.
So somebody else would
of
not
course the
get that.
clauses and but things may not have, but and so you will get similar questions. You will definitely get figures of speech question, because linguistic and stylistic analysis of poem means figure of speech wale questions aayenge hi aayenge. Where is the poem located, or whose point of view is this passage from? What's the characterization? Aise wale questions to aayenge. So you could look it up and figure out from here where you can have questions on. And as I said, they may not be very long passages. Again, for academic writing, please don't think that your passages will be this long. Itna lamba hum de nahi payenge. So we will be breaking it up into a few questions and then asking accordingly. That's how we generally do, which is why you may get comprehension type questions as well, because you have to understand academic writing. So another kind of question that we could ask is, which is the linking word that best fits in between 2 sentences? However, because, therefore. So So therefore and so were the same, and because or however में से चुनना होता, तो फिर what would you have chosen would depend on whether those two were in contrasting ideas or whether they were a causal relationship. So वैसा वाला question आपसे पूछा जा सकता है कि which word may best fit between these two lines, you know, sentence 1 and sentence 2. वैसा question पूछा जा सकता है. But again, not I don't think it is very complex. It just requires you to be present mentally in the exam and use a little bit of English knowledge is really helpful, and common sense is very helpful. So this paper, I think, is generally the easier one in terms of the semester 2 is generally the easier one, even in the written final exam, but things and phonology. हाँ, आपको practice करनी है. So one thing that you can do is you can go over all of this, and on Monday I think we are meeting at 6 o'clock because I refuse to take class tomorrow. Are we meeting on Monday?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we are meeting on Monday. So yes, so what you can do is that's a doubt solving session. This is basically all the points of all the ये हमें समझ में नहीं आया, वो समझ में नहीं आया, and you can definitely ask questions on phonology and other stuff as well, for sure then. So that can be done. But that will be a doubt solving session. Does that help?
Yes,
Okay, ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you,
This
ma'am.
time I
Good
spent like
wishes
1
for
hour
the
on
new
off
year.
topic.
Good,
Thank you,
good
ma'am.
wishes
Someone
for the
say
new year.
something good about the fact that the class is over.
Miss my daughter.
Very good.
Ma'am,
चलो, तुझे
wishing you
खाना
Happy New
मिलेगा,
Year.
मम्मी का ध्यान मिलेगा. Very nice. Lovely to see you all. Okay, yes.
Happy New Year
Anusha
to
ma'am,
everybody in
Happy
advance.
New Year in
Happy
advance.
New Year to all of you in advance. Yes.
Same
Happy
to you.
New Year, ma'am.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year.
Happy New Year,
On
ma'am.
Monday, yeah.
Yeah.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
ma'am.
See you.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.